Don't forget to like and share this broadcast with your friends and family on Facebook Live as well as on YouTube. Let all of your friends and family know to subscribe so that you know when the Center of Hope is going live.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. If it's Monday night and it's 9 p.m., it's time for Real Talk. I want to welcome all the Real Talkers on tonight. I'm your co-host on tonight, Bishop Mitchell Taylor, and I'm so glad that all the Real Talkers are here on this evening. Just want to recognize a few of you that are our early viewers on this morning. We got Justina, we got Lisa, we got Elder Davis, we got Kimberly Pendleton, we've got Barbara Waring, we've got Minister Laverne-elect Wilson, we've got Andrea, we've got who we got here coming on now? We've got Minister-elect Hollis Jackson Jr. on with us tonight. We've got Evangelist-elect Sheraya Wilson on with us tonight. We've got a lot of Real Talkers coming in. Well, listen, hit that share button as you come in and tag as many people as you can in your ecosystem and let them know that Real Talk is on the air. We've got an exciting program planned for you on this evening. And as we promised on last week, we were going to expand our conversation to include some more dialogue relative to this nexus that we are trying to bridge between the old and the new, trying to bridge that delta. And I think we've been doing a tremendous job. And I just want to thank all of our guests even before they come on. But before I do that, let me bring my co-host on, Bishop Liston Page II. He's here tonight. Bishop.
Hey, good evening, Bishop Taylor.
Good evening, sir. Good evening. I was just saying that I was going to start thanking, some of our guests that have been with us the past few weeks, and Elder Darrell Brown, Elder Christina Barr, and Overseer Kayshawn Joseph, soon to be married on Friday. So I just was ready to thank each and every one of them on this week. And then we have a special guest with us on tonight who I'm sure you're familiar with, his dad, His Grace, Bishop Anthony Macklin from the sanctuary at Kingdom Square and in Glendale, Maryland. And so he's going to be with us on tonight. His son, Brandon Macklin, so he's going to join us for some dialogue on tonight. But Bishop, I want to just give a shout out to Haas, who is the artist who gave me this shirt here. And he said Oprah has one. And I got this in Harlem at the Red Rooster. I had lunch there on Saturday after I left the Greater Highway Deliverance Temple. And let me just say, again, I want to thank all of the staff. I want to thank Lance. I want to thank Skylar. I want to thank my niece, LaWanda. I want to thank Bishop Page and Mother Page for opening up the doors to us and allowing us to. The church was jam-packed. There's no way we could have had that service in Long Island City. No way in the world possible we could have had that in Long Island City. And so once again, we have been tethered to the Greater Highway Deliverance Temple. And Bishop and Mother Page, thank you so much, and we really appreciate it. We had a tremendous homegoing. After that, we went to Red Rooster, and that's how I got this shirt. And I'm going back to get another one for you, Liz. They didn't have your size. He told me I had to come back because your size is one size bigger than me. You know, because you lift more weights than I do. and he didn't have that size. So, but anyway, thank you, Haas, for the shirt. Thank you. All right, Bishop. So, where have you been? Tell us about what's going on. I know you done been. Were you in Africa or where you?
Listen, I have been in so many different cities. Listen, I've been in Atlanta, Milwaukee, Chicago, Cincinnati. Listen, I've been everywhere. But I'm back tonight in the studio with the Real Talkers before I go to Dallas tomorrow. So I'm back in the studio with the Real Talkers on tonight.
Well, listen. I'm humbled, and we're grateful that you're here. You know, traveling all over the world and blessing people with your ministry gift and with the anointing that is upon your life. We appreciate that part of your deposit, and we appreciate this part of your deposit as well. You know, being with us on tonight. So let's get right into the conversation. I want to say that I'm excited that I've been home this week. Praise the Lord. And we had, working on the building and getting everything. When you come, listen, you're coming for the anniversary in October. Is this October?
Yes. What's the date?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right. We'll work that out. So, but when you listen, the sound and the it's like when you talk in the mic, it's like you don't even have, all you have to do is breathe in the mic.
You know what? Let me come the fifth Sunday. Let me do that. And the fifth Sunday, the 29th. Is it fourth Sunday?
No, let me see something. Let me see something. Hold up.
Sundays in October.
Hold up. I think, if I'm not mistaken, 1 second. I think. Let me just check one thing out here.
Yeah. The 29th is 5 Sundays.
No. I can't do the 29th. We can't do the 29th.
Okay.
You know why?
Why?
Because your brother is going to be on the 29th. Bishop, not your biological brother, your ministerial brother, the Archbishop Eric R. Figueroa. He's coming on the 29th.
Oh, okay. Well, then October's a wash. We
got more than Sundays, though. We're not just doing Sundays.
I thought you were just doing Sundays.
No, man, we got Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Okay.
We don't do Saturdays now. I keep the Sabbath and keep it holy. I don't do nothing on Saturday.
Okay, well, maybe we could do an afternoon service or something. I don't know.
On a midweek?
Sunday. On a Sunday.
Oh, Sunday. Yeah, that's what I was trying to do, an afternoon on Sunday. But I think that your Sundays, from what I checked already, are already taken up. So I was looking at another date.
Yeah, okay. I would think the 29th would have been good, but
but I already checked your calendar.
Oh, okay.
And so you're that's what I'm saying. You jammed up.
Yeah, I got it.
You jammed up, brother. You jammed up. That's a good thing. You jammed up. I'm trying to tell you. I told Alan, listen, don't worry about it. Don't tell nobody he's double booked. Just give me everything he can do. That's it. I do all the cleanup, take care of it. Done.
Barbara said, "What about November?"
Please, I'm booking these days. Let's bring our guest on tonight. Before we run out of time, let's start with the First Lady of Real Talk, Elder Christina Barr.
Hello.
Christina.
How are you?
How you doing, Elder Barr?
Can you guys hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm doing really good. How are you?
We doing good,
Excellent.
Christina.
Excellent. And we're going to bring in the overseer, the Real Talk overseer, Kayshawn Joseph.
What's going on? Bless you, Bishop. Bless you, Bishop.
Hey, Kay. It's good to see you, man.
I walked so they could run. I took the hits in the beginning so they could run. I just want that known. I took the hits.
And on tonight, I am so proud to bring on Elder Darrell Brown Jr.
Hey everybody, Bishop. We're gonna get rebuked again tonight. I got my hat on in the sanctuary.
Yes, take that Dallas Cowboy foolishness off.
Listen, I'm gonna let Elder Brown introduce our special guest on tonight because we're going to dive right into this conversation, and I don't want to leave anybody out. So, Elder Brown, why don't you introduce our next guest on this evening?
Sure. Thanks so much, Bishop. So a few weeks ago, Bishop Taylor and Bishop Page were getting on us, of course, and talking about musicians and saying how we wanted to give them voice in this conversation. So I have one of my good friends, one of my best friends actually, who is a musician. He is the son, as Bishop Taylor mentioned earlier, of Bishop A.G. Macklin, who is a father here in the DMV area. But Brandon is a musician, drummer, producer who has literally traveled the world with some of the biggest artists on the gospel side with the likes of Donnie McClurkin, and also on the secular side as well, recently traveling and touring with Chris Daughtry. So I'm excited to have him. I'm excited for the perspective that he's going to bring tonight. I already told him just prepare to get rebuked. So I think he's ready for the conversation.
What's up, everybody? How's everyone doing? Bishop Page, good to see you, sir. Bishop Taylor, thank you for having me. We're all laughing because we know we about to get beat down. We know we about to get beat down, but what better way to do it than with family? So I'm excited to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and it's so good to see you all. And let's go Cowboys. Let's go, Spud.
Lord. Listen, let me start before Bishop Taylor kind of sets the table tonight. Brandon, it is a joy to see you on tonight. And you are doing tremendous work on the gospel side. And I'm going to rebuke you about the secular side. But I want to thank you so much for being with us tonight. And I think you're going to lend very much to this conversation. So I'm excited about you being with us tonight. And Spud, I want to thank you for making that connection. And I think it's going to be now 4 against 2, but I think our odds are still good. All right.
I like that. I like that, Bishop Page. I like that. Well, Bishop Page, you equal about 3 yourself. So I think we're still even here. We're still on even ground. Well, tonight, let me just kind of, if you guys will allow me, just want to kind of rethread last week's needle just a little bit. As we started, we were talking about bridging the gap between generations in church leadership. We wanted to discuss the challenges faced by aging ministries, dealing with declining youth participation, and the absence of succession. And we did explore how older statespersons or senior sages and or upcoming younger bishops, elders, ministers can bridge that generational gap while maintaining the church's core principles and embracing new methodologies that resonate with millennials and future generations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we got into that whole dialogue. And at the end of it, we got to this old wine in new wine skins. Now I'm skipping the part that Brandon has been brought in on, because that was a week earlier. I see El DeBar kind of, because that was the week, and that kind of really started when we introduced Cracky, and El DeBar said everyone knows who Cracky is. You know, it's so funny. But so you know, that minister of music and how important. You know, I was with Stanley Brown Thursday night of last week, and we were talking about musicians, ministers of music, and he was trying to give me some perspective on how to look at things. Now, you guys all know Stanley. I'm saying this publicly. I know he won't mind. Matter of fact, he would have been on here tonight, but he's in South Africa with Bishop Hezekiah Walker right now. And so, but he said to me, you know, one thing to think about, Bishop, is, do you have a high school diploma? Do you have a bachelor degree? Do you have a master's degree? Because if you think about some of the prerequisites that guys that don't even know how to read music are asking for, and churches are acquiescing to it. I mean, if you think about it, if a church is having a 2-hour service on Sunday and the musician is asking for $1,000 and all he has is a high school diploma and he can't read music, he's getting $500 an hour. Where do you get that in the real world? And so, you know, you can kind of, you know, paint that with many different ministry gifts. I'm not just isolating musicians now, because you have engineers in churches. All right. So, I mean, there's a lot of different. So I think there's a lot to talk about, you know, when you come to, you know, that piece or whatever. Anyway, Bishop Page brought up, and we kind of moved into this idea of something that he's talking about a lot and has talked about a lot. And I'm not going to try to rethread that needle. So I'm going to pass it off to him so he can reintroduce it on tonight. The old wine in new wine skins. And I will say that he did bring us to the point where he said that it was when you've tasted the authentic, it's difficult to accept something that is not authentic. And so, but I'll pass it off to him now.
Well, I think at this point, it would be probably beneficial to, I really want to hear from them, Brandon in particular, all of them, but Brandon in particular. And I think at this point, my concern, this is just my concern, and Brandon, please correct me if I'm wrong. I've ministered for your father on numerous occasions, done revivals, numerous occasions. It's a great church, a tremendous church, a traditional church, but yet it does have a contemporary modern twist that I'm sure comes from your musical background, also from your lovely sister who works along with your dad in ministry, two young, powerful PKs. But here's my concern. Y'all are too carnal. Now that's really that's really where I want to go. Y'all are carnal, too worldly, and I'm trying to understand. Christina's feeling me because Christina agrees with me. How do y'all sing gospel on Sunday and then you're touring the world with these secular artists Monday through Saturday? I have a problem with it. I have a serious problem with it. And I want you to explain that to me. And then the next thing I want us to talk about, and I was not going to broach this, but Bishop Taylor cracked the seal on this. K-Sean, who is an academician, Daryl Spud Brown, academician, Christina Barr, academician. How do they not at least undergird and support the idea that if a musician is going to be compensated, top dollar, shouldn't he at least have some level of education? Now, I do understand that there are outliers, that there's some people that are autodidact, there's some people that are just highly gifted. I get it. But all of these musicians are not autodidact, and they're not outliers, and they're not skilled. How do we justify compensating them these demands? Because I believe you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. So I think a lot of the negotiation may be why they receive what they receive, but that's my concern. So Brandon, I'm gonna throw it to you, and then Christina, Dow, Kayshawn, they can jump in any way they want to, but I'm gonna throw it to you. Help me with that, please. Help me.
Well, this conversation is age old. It's forever. It's forever going to happen. And I think that the reality is that from the musician side of things, there is so much weight and expectation that's placed on the minstrel for a service, whether it's Sunday morning, whether it's revival, conference, whatever. For one, the first qualification is that you're anointed. That automatically sets that musician to another level. Not only anointed, but when you start talking top dollar, you want them to be anointed and professional. And so when you start talking about the anointing, that goes without saying. Has God placed his hands on you? Has he made what you do special for his edification and his glory when the saints gather? Not only when the saints gather, but outside of the gathering of the saints as well. But when you start talking about professionalism, now we're starting to get to the upper echelon of musicians who are going to dress the part, musicians who are going to be on time, musicians who are leaders, natural born. If they're traveling with you, Bishop, are they going to catch the flight that you paid for? You know what I'm saying? And then those are just the small things. Now, once we start talking about, are you going to show up not smelling like weed? Are you going to show up, we won't even go down that route. But when we start talking about the
wait a minute, did I hear you just say, hold up, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I heard that right. Did you say show up smelling like weed?
Yes, I did, Bishop Taylor. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, I just want to make sure I heard that. All right, go ahead.
This is a commonality. This is
a commonality.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
Mitch, I told you they were carnal. I told you. You didn't believe me. They are carnal. They're borderline.
That doesn't count. That doesn't count, Bishop. Don't do that. Don't do that. That don't count. That's one off.
So when these are things that churches and pastors are dealing with on a weekly basis. And so when you start talking about the musician who is demanding this top dollar, I believe that there should be a checklist of anointing and professionalism. And you shouldn't have to look for your musician on a Sunday. You shouldn't have to look for your musician on a Thursday. Writing an email should not be difficult. Spelling should not be difficult. Not falling asleep in service should not be difficult. These are conversations that we should not even be having when we're starting to talk at the upper echelon of musicians. And so when you are encountering musicians who are asking for this top dollar, in order to make it make sense,
wait a minute, what did she say?
I would absolutely say that these are the qualifications that need to meet the standard. Now, along with professionalism, the last thing I'll say is experience. Bishop, if you're traveling, your musician has to know a hymn. He has to. And not only does he have to know a hymn, he has to be able to play that hymn in whatever key you feel like singing or talking or ministering in. And not only the hymn, that musician needs to know how to navigate different moves of the Holy Ghost as he is giving you the unction of how to move in that moment. You might go to a church and we ain't gonna dance today. I gotta prophesy, or I'm not gonna prophesy. I gotta lay hands. That musician has to be able to navigate those waters with you. And so when you start talking about those expectations, Top Dollar is absolutely necessary.
Wow. Well, I just want to let you know, I'm gonna let Bishop Tage take it, and I mean, I'm gonna give it to other people, whatever, because my mind is blown. I'm texting and whatnot, saying, "Are you hearing this?" But go ahead, push on.
Wow. Dag, bro, you had to end it like that. You had to end it on that. Like, yo, let's go. Go ahead, Elder Christina. You go first.
But I respect the fact that
I love it. Yeah.
we're having this dialogue. I just wanted somebody else to talk. Go ahead. Bishop,
Okay.
are you in shock? I'm surprised Bishop Page ain't saying nothing. He's sitting, you're frozen.
You know what happened? And I really want them to articulate this for me. I feel blessed because in the history of my ministry, my pastoral ministry, which is about 24 years now, I've only had, honestly, 3 musicians. I've had a gentleman named Frank Cleveland, a great guy. Edward Claycorn, who was with me for most of my ministry. Tremendous guy. Never had a problem with it. I got a gentleman now, Earl James, tremendous musician. I've never got a contact because I smelled weed. Now maybe I did, and I didn't know. I thought it was the Spirit of God. I got close. I don't know. I don't know what it was. I've never had a gummy. I never, I've been saved for a while now. Now maybe years ago, 20 plus years ago, maybe I would have been rolling it in the back with him. I've never heard of such weed. I've never heard of that. When I say heard of it, I hear stories all the time, but I've never come in contact with it. And I do understand people have medical conditions and it is now used for medicinal purposes. But if I was imposing the judgments that I came up under today, the first thing we would say, you need to come to the altar and let God deliver you from that. Let me lay some hands on you with some blessed oil. That's the era I grew up in. But so it's hard for me to wrap my mind around that. Go ahead, Christina.
Okay, so I just wanted to, chime in and agree that yes, many musicians. Okay, I will say musicians of our generation. Like, I don't usually see musicians in their 40s coming into a church late, smelling like weed, not knowing their hymns or keys. I think that's kind of like a new age kind of thing where we're trying to groom and shape the musicians and singers that we have today. I want to kind of go back to the idea that when we were talking about pants and hats in church, about it being like a preference thing. So even if you have a medicinal reason that you smoke weed, which most of it is recreational, God bless. But even if you have a medicinal reason that you smoke weed, I feel like it is preferential that you do not carry that smell into the sanctuary. So that's how I feel. If you are doing this, whether recreationally or medicinally, there needs to be some sort of reverence that says, okay, I'm going to a new place. This place is holy and sacred. I want to prepare my body and mind by being the best sober version of myself that I can be while I'm doing this job and this task. Somebody brought up the fact that many musicians are on the spectrum, autism, ADHD, bunch of neurodivergence. Now, sure, let's say, Kayshawn, let's say they are. Sure, I personally do know musicians that are on the spectrum and that are just geniuses and create things that normal people cannot create.
Yeah.
However, even those musicians that I know off the top of my head that may be on the spectrum or neurodivergent are respectful to church by the way they dress and just coming into the space clean and not smelling like weed. So even though it's common, it should not be, and it's not something that the church should stand for. I do agree with Brandon on the qualifications of like a top-notch musician being professional, being skilled and anointed.
Mm.
And I wanted to add to the education aspect because I feel like that's really where the nuance comes in. Because many professional musicians did not study at a conservatory. You know, a lot of the people who are touring and making big bucks with huge pop artists, they don't have a formal classical education, but they do have experience that makes them qualified for what they're asking for. However, as someone who has been trained classically in multiple languages, opera, jazz, like I have done this. I can read music and I can also usher in the spirit, you know what I mean? So I come on both sides to say that when you don't have education, education is something that proves I started something, I mastered it, I stuck to it. And so, even in my personal life, as I continue to pursue higher education for myself, I find myself in a lot of situations where right now I'm a teaching assistant. And I'm like, wow, I know I can teach better than half of the staff, if not more than them, because of my experience and my skill and my natural knack for just being an educator, being understanding, nurturing, and just unlocking new things in my students. However, I cannot get paid the same as somebody who has that degree because education is the qualification for the thing that I'm asking for. Now, in the church, many churches, I don't want to say all churches, but many Pentecostal churches don't read from hymnals anymore. And so even if you were to choose a hymn, it's rare that the singer would open up the book and just pick a song and sight read it. And so it's also, I think I'm talking for a little bit. I'm sorry if I'm talking too much, but it's also rare that a musician would have to open up the book and sight read it. Now, in Episcopal, Methodist, many Baptist churches, Southern Baptist, Presbyterian, you go into a place and the musician, the minister of music, is sight reading on the pipe organ, or, you know, they are reading what they are playing. And so the expectations and qualifications are different for different spaces. And I also believe that as a musician and someone who is, you know, paid to do what I do, I don't expect every church to be able to afford me. And I've had conversations where churches have tried to cut my pay and tell me, well, we don't think we can pay you this. And I said, well, that is okay. I understand that. I also know I may not be able to continue to offer my experience, professionalism, expertise, and education at a rate that I don't think is respectful or honorable for what I'm offering. Also, in the same breath, I come from a small ministry. I know what it's like to not be able to afford top notch musicians, and you want to have that sound, but I cannot make $1,000 musician play for 25 cents because it's dishonorable to them and their gift. And so I know I said a few things. I'm sorry if I was rambling a little bit, but as someone who really is like very intersectional when it comes to like the music and the financial and just the performing aspect of it, I feel very invested when people talk about the carnality of even performing secularly because your light can honestly shine in secular spaces. I have sang professionally in secular spaces as well. And I think it adds to my professionalism and what I bring to the church space as well, because I've had opportunities outside of the four walls that has shaped me as a musician.
So I want to jump into that. Oh, sorry, Bishop, you're going to say something. I want
No,
to jump.
I write things down so the old mind can remember.
Gotcha. I want to jump in because, okay, a few things. So I actually was maybe on more so y'all's side of it, Bishop's side of it, as far as being a little bit more cynical on the. I struggled with the notion of like musicians having an honorarium. I struggled with that for the longest time because I saw it that I said, well, first, that's not what the Bible teaches, and to me, a lot of the thought pattern comes out of the idea that the musicians are the Levites of the church, and I don't. There's no Levites in the church. We're all, if anything, we're all Levites. We're all priests unto our God. And so I kind of struggled with that. And then, as somebody just said in the chat, I did see a lot of situations where the musicians would get paid more. I felt like the musicians were more, more in control of the service in many cases, or have more control of a church than any other place. What opened my mind a little bit was that realizing that for some people, and I got to shout the person out, my brother Spencer Livingston, who is my organist, who usually travels with me if I go somewhere. What he had to explain to me was that it's ministering. So even though they're not in the microphone necessarily, it's still them offering their gift prophetically or what have you, whatever you want to consider it to be. It is still them ministering in the service in the same way. And so you kind of just are being a blessing to them in that way. So when he said that, that kind of opened my mind a little bit up more to it. And so I was able to kind of process and respect it a little better than I did. Now, I do see some things in the chat about people saying musicians with ADHD and autism and stuff. I mean, there's everybody, there are people in every group, preachers, prophets, all, you know what I'm saying, that have those things. And in fact, sometimes musicians do sometimes have mental, things going on because of the genius and the creativity, the creative juices that is required to be a musician. It takes a lot out of your brain and out of your mind to be able to process notes and all. So that's not uncommon. I do think that professionalism is important and integrity is important. And so my thing with people that like, okay, you smoke, I'm not going to police what you do outside of here. Like, that's not my job. I'm not your pastor. But the thing that people do need to consider is that if you smoke and then you come in, right, people can catch a contact if they're close to you. Now the praise team is high because you high. And so now we, you know what I'm saying? And now we singing and modulating 10 times. We can't figure out why, you know what I'm saying? Everybody's just high. That's not you know what I'm saying? That's not okay. And so the thing is, you have to still be, again, I think that's where the professionalism and the ethics kick in, and where the church needs to explain the ethical side of it. Say, okay, maybe we're not saying you're going to hell for smoking weed, but in here, you know what I'm saying? This is our requirements. This is what we require to be able to minister in this capacity because ... And so I think that that's something that we should consider too, as far as that goes. And so I think that, again, I mean, there's, different sides to it, different vantage points to it. I respect the musicians. I understand that the explanation that was given to me from some musicians that play secularly is that it's just like us having a professional job. For example, I'm a teacher. I'm a school teacher by trade. I teach in middle school. So that is my teaching. I'm not in there speaking in tongues necessarily and carrying on. It's not a spiritual thing, but it's my job. And so to them, it's the same thing. It is them playing in a venue or what have you. That is the same way. My caveat to that, and to any musician that's on here, would be that you have to be mindful if morality does leak into what you're doing. So for example, you have to consider where you're playing, and will your job cause you to compromise your morals, or will what you're doing? If it does, then we have to have some questions about that. But I mean, that's something that I think we should definitely think about and be in prayer about, because that is something that we need to be mindful of. But that was the explanation, Bishop, that was given to me, that it's like a professional job. Just like how we go to work, we do things professionally. They go to work as well, and they play in those formal places. Is that okay, Bishop? Is that? Yeah, jump.
Yeah, I just want to. So much amazing things have been said, and I just got to rewind just for a second, because Bishop Hayes started off calling us carnal and saying that these musicians are carnal, but we got some pastors out here that love the carnal musicians as long as they can play in A flat. As long as they can play in E flat, y'all don't mind. y'all don't mind. And I think it's a few other things that go into play, especially when we start talking about musicians' pay. Now, this is coming from someone who was a musician, who played at other churches for other artists, but never got paid to play in my own church. I was the minister of music in my church, grew up playing the drums, played the bass, directed the choir, never got a dime. It's my granddaddy's church. We not giving you nothing. So we can't pay you like the Lord can pay you. You know what I mean? You can't beat God's giving, that type of thing. But I think there are a few things that go into play. Number one, it is what do we allow? The problem, because we have placed so much emphasis on gift, we oftentimes negate responsibility. And as long as they can play, they can move from one church to the next without ever being held accountable. So, for example, Bishop, if somebody's playing for you, they're unprofessional, they're showing up late, you're preaching all over, traveling with you, showing up, smelling like weed, and you have to say, hey, listen, I got to let you go. They can go somewhere else And that next church is not going to call you to say, Bishop Page, tell me about this musician. How was there? They're not going to care, because as long as they can get in there and they can play, that's all that matters. Now, to the flip side of that, one thing that is the cry of musicians is that pastors and leaders often only care about their gift and don't care about their soul. Because when you have musicians now who are professional musicians who will play at a smaller church for less pay, or even less money, or sometimes for free, because they have a pastor who literally cares about their soul, who cares about how they're doing outside of when they get on the organ, or when they get on the bass, or when they get on the drums, or when they get up to lead praise and worship. The next thing is, I think the other thing that we often have to take into consideration is also scale. You got to take into consideration scale and where you live. So, for example, there's a set scale for here in the DMV for organists on Sunday morning. It's what the churches have set. So if you come under that scale, asking for an organist on Sunday morning, prime time, 10 to 12, you're not getting an organist for $200 in that time. You may need to move your service to 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, because the churches in the area have pretty much set the salary range. You know what I mean? So that also benefits those that may not be that skilled. Those that may not be as skilled as really somebody who should be getting that $1,000 a Sunday, because the salary range in the area has been set at this. I may only be able to play in 3 keys, but y'all need somebody, and y'all are going to take me because y'all need somebody. The other thing is, I think that playing in the Black church, in the Pentecostal church especially, you playing the organ, playing the keys, especially you're driving the service, is probably one of the most difficult tasks, because the Black church is made up of so many different genres. This is why you have so many artists who have laid the foundation, who grew up in church, who grew up in church. And so if somebody gets up and sings a hymn, they may not have to read it like Elder Christina said, but they got to know it. They better know, because if not, everybody's going to be looking at them funny. If we're going to do, if and Bishop, you know this, a good organist can make or break you. You know, it can push you and support you and have you preaching to the heavens, or it can be like a annoying mosquito in your ear to where you're just like, listen, stop. I don't need no organ while I'm preaching today. So I think, that's one thing we gotta take into consideration is everything that we're asking them to do. We're asking them to be able to back up a preacher. We're asking them to be able to find Sister Susie's key, even though she ain't got no key. She's off the scale. But y'all not gonna look at Sister Susie. Y'all gonna look at the guy on the organ because he can't find her key. Well, she's not in no key. She's literally not in a key. The bishop or the pastor is preaching, and he done went from A flat to E flat, all in 2 words. Y'all not gonna look at the pastor that's preaching. Y'all gonna look at the organist and say he can't follow him. So I think we got to look at kind of everything that comes along with playing in a service. And I'm specifically talking about organists and keyboardists, because they are really the driving point. They're really, that's really who you're going to play top dollar for. Bassists, drummers, we're going to get the short end of the budget, but you're going to pay top dollar for your organists and your keyboardists.
Bro, isn't that kind of dangerous? Isn't that kind of dangerous that they make or break the service? Like you said, you made a point. You said that, and I didn't mean to talk again, y'all, but like you made a point. You said that like a good organist can either push the preacher up or they can bring him down. And it's like, isn't that kind of? And so somebody said something in the chat. They said, and I agree with you. But somebody said something in the chat like, well, are we too dependent on the music sometimes that we make it like? Because I know some people that will not preach unless their musician is there, will not touch them, won't take the engagement, won't come, you know what I'm saying, will wait, or will like just talk in circles until the musician gets there because they feel. So isn't that kind of dangerous that we're so reliant generation? What do you
I think that's our culture. That is our culture. That's our culture. When I say make or break, I mean you can take it to the next level with an anointed musician who knows how to move, or you can hinder. You can hinder. You know what I mean? I think that's our culture. I think now if you have a culture that is not musically driven, then that's amazing. But typically, our Black Pentecostal churches, and we can even go into Baptist, are organ and musician driven.
I agree. I just wonder how dangerous that is. I'm sorry, Bishop. I'm done.
Yeah, I just wanted to just kind of reinforce what was said. I'm reading a book called Black Fire, 100 Years of African American Pentecostalism by Estrelda Y. Alexander. And she, in her book, she says Black Pentecostalism incorporates African use of music and rhythm as a key experience of worship. As with the slaves and at Azusa Street, music remains a constant in individual performances and congregational singing, accompanying prayer and collection of the offering, and punctuating and emphasizing strategic points in the sermon. Kinetic spirituality, the body and movement stands as a central symbol in both contexts. Not to move, raising hands, clapping, or swaying in some visible way indicates that a person is not a part of what the community is experiencing and signals a lack of spirituality. It gives evidence that he or she is an outsider and may not be a candidate for conversion. The importance of rhythmic engagement in Pentecostal worship is inescapable. Go ahead.
Can I? And I haven't read that book that she's referring to, but I think she's absolutely right. I mean, when we really talk about the invisible institution and the inception of the Black church in America, where the slaves gathered together in brush harbors and they hid and they sang and they prayed over kettle pots filled with water so that the sound, and they hung up quilts. She's absolutely right. That was the Africanness of our worship. And when we were talking about CCM versus traditional a few weeks ago, Dr. Joseph, that's my only issue when we start talking about CCM versus traditional, is because the reason that there was the AME church or the Black church is because we were not good enough to worship in those same spaces. And our way of singing and our way of preaching, one of my professors, Dr. Lisa Allen McLaughlin, says when we started to transplant into the main denominations, that's when we started to lose our Africanness, because again, our style of preaching, our style of singing, our style of worship was not accepted. It was said that it was not good enough. So now I feel sometimes that now again we're being told that our tradition and our style of worship is not good enough, so we need to do it this way. That's I kind of draw the fine line with that.
Brother Brandon is itching to jump in this, and he's I'm sorry, we keep cutting him off, bro. Please jump in this because we could talk like we just.
No, I'm good. There's so many things to say. It is culture how we do church. Now, how we do church and if we are being the church are two different conversations. How we do church is cultural. If we are being the church, it's kingdom. However, Bishop's gonna kill me when I say this, but we have to be wise with what we present, because if we don't present correctly, then we can't keep anybody. And so if we aren't presenting excellence, we can't say we serve an excellent God, but then do mediocre ministry. That makes us hypocritical in how we even worship an excellent God. And so as a Berklee graduate, I understand that, and Berklee College of Music is like one of the most prestigious music schools in the world. We understand that when we start talking music, we're not just talking about notes, scales, melodies, chords, rhythm. We're now talking therapy. We're talking psychologic. Like we're dealing with a whole nother level of spirituality that music brings to the table when we are in the presence of, or when we're in the gathering of the saints. And so that's where I completely agree with Christina. I completely agree with Spud. But even you, Doc, like Dr. K, it's like there's so many layers to this of what we've done. And weed is just an example of the proclivities that we have allowed to be brought into the church. Because it's weed now, but when I was growing up, it was homosexuality, and we allowed it to be in the choir stand and as our leaders. And then we started asking our questions: why was there so much secret molestation in the church and we didn't know about it? What you mean? That's a moot point at this point. You know what I'm saying?
Wow. You're the first one I heard in your generation speak on that.
Oh,
talk.
man.
I'm sorry. Talk.
It's a real thing. And I can't throw too many stones. I can't throw any stones, honestly. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of the things that I'm dealing with now, I've seen other preachers do after getting off the pulpit. First person I seen smoke cigarette on a church ground was a preacher. After he just say yeah, and was outside with that cig, with that Newport going, yes, sir. Didn't we not just have a good time in the Holy Ghost? But we let that slide for too long. And now we're looking at the carnal generation, or what is being called the carnal generation, and wondering how we got so far away from holiness, sanctification, professionalism, and the sort. But we was listening to albums of preachers and singers that we knew was doing trash, and we held them in high esteem. But now we're looking at the musician.
You bring up some very salient points, many that I cannot rebut. I have to support, but I have to say that in every aspect of life, you're going to have people who are hypocritical in their presentations. You're going to have hypocrites who are professionals, and you're going to have hypocrites or hypocrisy in the sacred space. I think a lot of what we are witnessing, in my own theological opinion, is we have too much compromise. There was a time where we would sacrifice having the excellence of a musician or the gifting of someone. And we would sacrifice that because we were more interested in the presentation of character and integrity and holiness and having some modicum of sanctity. And I think church has become what I would consider more visible than invisible, because Augustine said there's two types of churches, the invisible and the invisible. And we have become caterers to the visible church. And I agree with you, Brandon. I totally agree with you. We cannot present ministry on a subpar, inept level. It has to be presented with a level of excellence. But I also think we have to demand that there be a level of commitment to God before you're committed to a gift or an assignment or a job? Where did catechizing of people, where did that go? Where people that came into the church were trained, they were catechized, they were given a book of discipline. They were told these are the expectations. Where has that gone? And let me apologize first to your entire generation, because to be quite frank with you, I have not been what you would consider the pristine model of holiness. I understand what it is to be extremely conflicted and inconsistent with your walk. But bottom line is, woe is me if I do not preach the gospel, even if it hits me. Woe is me if I don't tell the truth. So the bottom line becomes, are we more interested now in performance, in presentation, or are we interested in the anointing of God being resident in our services? And I believe, now this is just listing page now, I believe we are very insensitive to what is anointing versus what is gifting. Because a gift will make people shout too. A gift will make people move too. But it is the anointing that lifts burdens and destroys yokes. So are we seeing yoke destroying anointings in our services? Or are we just leaving saying we had a good time? And that's really my concern. And then on another note, I just believe people should be compensated based on their level of gift, professionalism, preparation. And I know everyone will not go the traditional route of education. But I think there's something to be said about you, Brandon, who sat in a classroom in Boston. I think there's a lot to be said. Christina sat in the classroom. Brown sat in the classroom. Kayshawn sat in the classroom. I think it shows some level of discipline, control, because you just can't get a degree by showing up. You've got to do the work. So I look at education from the standpoint, can you embrace a system of study, and can you complete it over a 4-year period? That speaks volumes to me. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to be reckless, you're not going to be unbridled, you're not going to be controlled, but it does say to me that you can be bridled and that you can be disciplined and you can be controlled. And the last thing I'll say, we have failed your generation, Brandon. I'm going to tell you why. Because we have seen perversion and alternative lifestyles, but we turned the other way because they brought so much gifting to the ministry until we may slap them on the wrist if it came out publicly. But we knew behind the scenes what was going on, and we said nothing about it. So now it has perpetuated into other areas of misbehavior. Now we're talking about weed and getting high, and but you're right, it wasn't weed, it wasn't getting high, it was sexual perversion, and we never addressed it. And there's many people today that are hurt, they're wounded, they don't want to have anything to do with institutionalized Christianity because in many ways we failed them. So I agree with you.
Wow. I'm trying to bring all of this into some picture that I could put together for the audience on tonight, but I think that you guys have done a great job yourself. So I don't think that I have to do that. I'm not going to try to do that, but I will try to push us to the nexus of this conversation, you know, and I think it begs an explanation, and that is God has called us to preach deliverance to those that are captive. And I still believe, and again, like Bishop Page so eloquently said, and with great transparency, and I'll say the same thing, not trying to rival his whatnot, because he has a greater testimony than me. But the point of the matter is that we all have a testimony. We all have something that we're not proud of. You know what I mean? And yet, but you said something, Bishop, that I had to make note of. A couple of things that all of us said, you know, but woe is me if I preach not. Yeah, that's true. You know what I mean? But woe is us if we let that bad behavior be sanctioned and then allow the gift to perpetuate. And I think that goes back to, you know, some of our children that have been abused because someone turned a blind eye and a deaf ear. I have a friend of mine who, his name will remain nameless, but his father was a very prominent bishop, and there was a guy that his father, he was a musician or something like that, and his father let him stay over the house, and his father didn't know, or maybe I guess I don't think he would know, but staying over the house, he molested his son. And his son's first introduction to sexuality was a man that molested him in his own house, in his own bed, in the church. He got introduced to sexuality by a man in the church. That is, anyway, you know, and you said, you know, we've allowed sexual sins, and because we allow that, now we have the entrance of weed. I don't put sexual sins and weed on the same platform. I gotta definitely take that out of that whole thing. That's not a parody for me, because sexual sins and sexuality being implanted in our church is a very dangerous thing that has damaged a lot of people.
Yeah, but I think what he was trying to say, and I have to agree with it. I think Pandora's.
No, I'm not correcting. I
understand. I'm just saying, I believe Pandora's box has been opened with our silence. I think our silence have spoken much louder than our words. We have not pushed back on things that we knew were going on. We may not have concretized evidence, but we that are led by the Spirit shall be called the sons of God, and we have a spirit of discernment. We knew, looking at certain situations, that if it looked like a duck and walked like a duck and quacked like a duck, it was a duck. We also knew if we didn't see the actual act, we did see some of the residue, and we did not address it in many cases. That's all I'm saying.
And isn't it interesting, Bishop Page, that we're talking about that, right? But now we have to be careful, because now back then, I know all of you, I think you know what I'm trying to say. You know, back then it was, there was a cause and an effect because of the proximity, because of that spirit. Now, are we saying now that spirit doesn't exist with?
No,
that
no,
no. I'm talking rhetorically. I'm just my point is I know you're not saying that. It does exist. We cannot. It does. It's the same spirit. And I know we're afraid to talk about it, but I'm just saying, and I'm not discriminating, and I'm not because you can't. And I've coined this term 20 years ago. You can't demonize what God has called you to evangelize. You can't do that. I realize that, and I'm committed to that. Right. And I'm just trying to understand, because, we have a lot to minister to. And I think that you said it, Bishop, you said it, and Brandon said it, and I'm concerned about this too. I'm more concerned about the soul, and I'm concerned about the welfare of those guys and girls that play for me and sing at the church. I'm very concerned about that. And I think that I've demonstrated that to them. And that's why I can say this publicly. Go ahead, Bishop.
I think Spud and Brandon, along with Christina and Kayshawn, I think what I'm hearing, particularly from Brandon in Spud, is that because he started his soliloquy saying that I called them carnal, which I did, but he says that they are carnal preachers that are more concerned with the musician being able to put them in E flat, and he is right. So what he's saying to me is that the hypocrisy that goes along with what we actually see in the sacred space, and I would dare say, without any fear of retribution, it is a pathology, it is a nomenclature in Pentecostalism, particularly in our churches, that we tend to be extremely situational in our ethical perspective. We deal out of situational ethics. It's a floating ethic, and we tend to come down very hard on those who may not have a particular proclivity that we cannot identify with. And then the proclivities that we can identify with, we tend to be a little bit more tolerant and a little bit more merciful. And I think that in their generation, where I can see the weed, Mitch, having the same parallel, because I would say addiction is addiction. If it's a sexual addiction, if it's a drug addiction, addiction is an addiction, and it must be addressed. And I don't think we in our generation have addressed certain things. And I'm going to tell you why. Because we have been guilty of many of the things that we needed to address. And because we were guilty of those things, we didn't feel that we had the strength, the power, the influence, the wherewithal, even the resiliency based on what we've been through to speak to it honestly. So what we have happened is we've been mute, our hands have been tied, and it has perpetuated now into other addictions. One in particular they're dealing with now is the weed or the drugs. But me personally, everybody don't have no ADHD. Everybody don't have no mental dysfunction or mental health issue. I think what we've done, we've learned how to attach a mental health issue with a real spiritual deficiency that we need to ask God to deliver us from these type of behaviors.
Yeah. Elder Barr, did you want to add something to this? You've been sitting patiently, and I did not want to. I saw you a couple of times trying to whatnot. So I want you to say what you wanted to say. Give you a chance to speak.
Okay, thanks. So one thing that that Dr. Joseph brought up was about music making or breaking the service, and is that a dangerous thing? As someone who has studied, Africana culture and how it transcended into Christianity in the Americas, I love it. I know it's a part of us and it's a part of who we are. But even biblically, we can find examples of how music was used to usher in the presence. I think there's an example in Second Kings where a musician played and it guided or inspired a prophecy from Elisha. And if music has the, I don't want to say power, but if music has the ability to shift spaces prophetically and spiritually, that means that the musicians, singers, preachers have to practice sanctification ongoing. If we have such an important role in the spirituality of how a service is taking place, it's not something that should be taken lightly. I know we talked about presentation and how, nobody is perfect. Everyone has a vice that they're trying to get over. And my problem is some people are not trying to get over it. A few years ago, I was in prayer with God, and I was kind of, I have I don't know, I'm sorry if I'm rambling a little bit, but when I was in prayer, God revealed to me that there are some things that I pray for and I ask Him to remove, and there are other things that I kept quiet about. And
Mm.
and it really checked me, because if I can believe God to be a healer, deliverer, waymaker, why is it that I'm not bringing to Him the proclivities that I enjoy? Right? Why is it that I'm saying, God, you're able to do everything except for this little thing that I like doing?
Right.
And it checked me to the point where I said, okay, God, truly create in me a clean heart, truly renew a right spirit within me,
Mm.
because I don't want to do some things and not all of them. I don't want my ministry to be tainted. I don't want your word to be tainted. I don't want just the kingdom of God to be tainted by my lack of accountability. And this is not just because I sing or not just because I preach, but as a Christian, as a representative of Jesus Christ, I decided that I want to try my best to live my best, because me living holy, sanctified, and set apart speaks volumes to as to what God can be. And so somebody living in sin or living in a proclivity or in a place where they don't want to change says that they don't believe, or they don't want to believe that God can get them out. And so my prayer is truly that the musicians, that um, every Christian is truly understanding the role that we play in the service in bringing souls and evangelizing, and taking sanctification seriously and seriously setting yourself apart to be used by God.
Well, I think that the conversation tonight is Elder Bar. I think that very spot on, very on point with that. And, I think that, you cannot strip away. And I think that, Brandon, you said it, and I wrote it down. Doing church is cultural. Being the church, you said it was something else, but I think you said kingdom, but I think I would replace that with the word spiritual. You know what I mean? So doing church is cultural because we have a cultural way, but being the church is spiritual. I think that's a great way to kind of to end tonight's dialogue, and try to continue it on next week if you guys have the strength, because we haven't even, we couldn't even get past this. And so let's kind of wrap with final remarks on tonight. And since Christina just spoke, I'm just going to go back to Brandon, and then we'll go to Spud, and then we'll go to Kayshawn, and Christina, and then Bishop Page, you and I will kind of wrap it up and set up our dialogue for next week. Go ahead, Brandon.
Thank you again, Bishop. I want to end by probably being the voice of our generation by saying to both you, Bishop Taylor, and Bishop Page, that we appreciate the transparency and the vulnerability of accepting your part in our carnality. and I'm kidding when I say that, but I do appreciate the fact that you all have and can accept that there are some things that were just a deaf ear and a blind eye. Yep. And it has affected us in ways where we are either asking questions or we're undoing what we originally were taught or what we originally believed, because where we are and how we've grown up has shifted that.
Wow.
And so I just want to end by saying I appreciate, as a musician moving into preaching and leadership, I want to say I appreciate that, because there are a lot of pastors and a lot of preachers and a lot of leaders who we see who will never be honest about the things that they did to affect the next. They just always want to say what's wrong with the next. And when we have conversations like this, we can really pull the covers back and say, all right, yeah, we have some things to work out without question. And what you did today helps us to work out what's underneath our covers. And Elder Christina is absolutely correct. There are things that we won't take to God because we've seen God use other people in spite of it, thinking that I don't need to take it to God, because if I see them use it, then God will still bless me in my mess because he blesses them in theirs.
Wow.
So that's how I want to end. I just want to end by saying thank you for the opportunity to be here, and thank you for what has released and freed me of things by just hearing you all being transparent and vulnerable to what has happened in your generation. So I appreciate that, man. I'm thankful for that.
Wow.
Well, thank you.
Brandon, you don't have to try to do all that. All right. He been calling us carnal every week. They're rebuking us every week. You don't have to. I know it's your first week, but you don't have to do all that. Okay. No, again, this has been an amazing conversation. I look forward to Mondays. Thank you, Bishop Taylor. Thank you, Bishop Page. Elder Christina and Dr. Joseph are amazing constituents. What Elder Christina just shared is really even the sentiments of my heart as well. We all, as Bishop Page said, have conflictions. We all are taking this thing at one at a time. But one question the Holy Ghost posed to me yesterday, and I posed it to the church, was if somebody just had to look at your life and you were not able to address or provide redress as to why you do what you do, and there's no explanation that you can give, what would they say about your life? What would that show if you were not able to quantify it or qualify it? Would it show that you live what you profess? Or would there be some question marks that they have from just looking at the way you live? And I just want to, as a carrier of the gospel, as a minister, as a preacher of the gospel, I want to make sure that I walk worthy of the calling that God has placed on my life. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. But I just want to make sure, as Elder Christina said, I'm striving the best that I can to walk worthy of this calling. So thank you again, Bishop Taylor and Bishop Page, for having us on.
Before Keyshawn goes, I want to just quote something Bishop Page says all the time. I'm not perfect, but I'm making a perfect effort.
Absolutely. Thank you to for this opportunity. Thank you to Bishop Taylor and to Bishop Page and to my constituents, my peers. Wonderful. Thank you, Brother Brandon, for coming on and for being with us and everything. This is a heavy conversation. It's very loaded. Music is such a heavy thing. If I was to say anything to my Pentecostal brothers and sisters, I would say, let's be mindful to guard our senses. We have to guard our senses. And when I say that, if there's anything that we learn from the Church of Corinth, is that there's a very thin line between sensuality and spirituality. Right. The Bible teaches in the book of Corinthians, the first chapter, that they came behind a no gift waiting for the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. We see the listing of the gifts in 1 Corinthians chapter number 12, but yet there is a lack of love, there's a lack of integrity, and there's a lot of a lack of control of the senses. And so one of the things we have to be careful of in the Pentecostal church is that we're not just being sensual, being spiritual. And sometimes if there's anything that could justify a bad life, it is, as Sister Christina said, watching someone minister in service, and because they know how to touch the senses, it's making us stir, it's making us move, it's making us jump and stir and all that, and goosebumps and whatnot, that we think that it justifies a lifestyle. If there's anything that used to confuse me, it was the same thing. It made me think, well, clearly I can do, because you could still preach it. What am I trying? And then I would try and it wouldn't work. So I'm like, okay, well, clearly I just have to just live what God told me to live. But I will say that sensuality can produce, spirituality reproduces. So I think, again, like when you're sensual, you can produce a moment, you can, maybe strike for a moment, but spiritual mindedness reproduces fruit. The fruit of the Spirit is what comes out of that. And that comes with intentionality and consistency and growth. And so I think that is the fruit of spirituality. And so we just have to be mindful, not to just fall into just being sensual, but that we are mindful of what it produces in us after the fact. Does how I act in the service, am I using my gift to aid my flesh? Am I using my gift to help me with picking folks up and attracting people to? Am I particularly doing this a certain way to make myself more attractive and win people and get folks in my room or whatever? What is the fruit of what I'm producing? Because if I'm doing that, it is not from the Spirit of God. It is from my flesh. And so I pray that, that's just where we continue to guard ourselves and be mindful of that and be mindful of what we take in, because we have to be mindful of our senses. We have to guard our senses. You don't want to be going high in the realms of the Spirit like that and dealing with spiritual warfare and you not sober-minded. The Bible teaches us to be sober-minded. We got to be careful, practically, naturally, and spiritually, being mindful of how we guard ourselves, that we don't mix drugs in the Spirit of God or with other things in the Spirit of God, because it can be dangerous for our mental health and for our mind as well, going in that level. So that's just all I say: sensuality and spirituality.
That's very good. Christina, Elder Bar?
Okay, so like we have been saying, this is a loaded topic. I feel like it hits close to home for all of us because music is so important in our church today. One common theme that we've been talking about the past few weeks is transparency and open-mindedness, being willing to come to the table and not only discuss things, but possibly regroup and reprioritize. And I know we will, but I want to keep that mindset going, because I think if we're able to come to these type of discussions with an open mind and say, okay, well, maybe things aren't going exactly the way they should be, and we're not okay with them not going exactly the way they should be or as effective as they can be, being willing to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, well, we've been prioritizing this. Maybe we can be able to prioritize some other things. Even though music is my entire life, I feel the call to souls and salvation even more than I feel the call to like great chords and runs and all those good things, and I'm willing to reprioritize. And I want to encourage you guys to consider possibly reprioritizing some of the things, and maybe some of the music and some of the what we call excellence. Going back to the drawing board and saying, okay, well, we've swapped out some character, we swapped out some integrity, we swapped out sanctification and holiness. How can we incorporate those things back into our music ministries and our churches so that we can grow professionally, spiritually, and truly expand the kingdom of God in a holistic way, not a performative way and expand hell, but in a holistic way, that we are striving for excellence, holiness, and we are truly heaven bound, living the way that Christ expects us to live. So I'm willing to go back to the drawing board. I want us to keep that mindset that things may not be perfect, but they can be better.
Wow. Well, this was awesome. And Bishop Page, we have to go back next week. I guess we'll start the same way and see what happens with that new wine going into the old wine skins. I pray that we can keep this same unit back for next week, because I think there's definitely a part 2 to this conversation. Thank you, each and every one of you, for coming on tonight. I do want to take care of some housekeeping business now. I want to let you guys go so you don't have to go through this painful discussion I'm going to have with the Real Talkers tonight. Thank you so much, guys, and we'll see you guys on next week. But listen, you guys were blessed tonight by our guests this evening. Now, Bishop Page and myself, this is not, we're doing our best to bridge this conversation between the multi generations, and we need your help to continue to do this. The engineers, everything that we're doing costs money. Even and we need you to participate tonight. So I'm asking tonight, Bishop, I think we can get 40 people tonight, 40 Real Talkers tonight, to sow a seed of $20 on this evening. And all 40 of those people, just put done in the comment section before you sign off tonight. The ways to give are on the screen. Bishop, you want to add something to that?
As I always say, generosity is the seed for more. What we have heard tonight from those young lions and lioness has just been priceless. To hear how serious they are,
yes,
about ministry. I mean, all of them are extremely serious, committed to the work of ministry. It would serve us well tonight if every Real Talker would just plant that seed. As we would say, this is good ground. This is not a money generating platform. We collect an offering just to make sure that engineers are taken care of. Our guests, we give them a token of appreciation for taking time out of their Monday night to come be with us. So we need you to help us. They're giving. Bishop Taylor, I see Barbara Waring, thank you for your seed. Michelle Smith, thank you for your seed. Adrian Riley, thank you for your seed. Carol Sutton, thank you for your seed. God is going to bless you. Trust me, the Lord is going to bless you. And next week is going to be absolutely amazing. I was going to bring up that text of scripture that Christina referenced in 2 Kings about Elijah, but I want to bring that up next week. I'll bring that up next week. Hassan, thank you for your seed on tonight. This was outstanding. P. Morant, thank you for your seed. Vivian, thank you for your seed on tonight. We are so grateful and so appreciative. And I know we've gone over time, but when you have the quality of guests that we had on tonight and that we're going to have on next week and going forward, we need you all just to be a little bit patient and tolerant when we go over the time, because I'm sure you're being blessed like I'm being blessed just by engaging in this conversation. Thank you, Vivian, for your seed. Thank you, Yvonne East, for your seed on tonight. Laverne, thank you, Laverne, for your seed on tonight.
And Sharon Moore, we miss Sharon Moore.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Sharon, for your seed on tonight. The Real Talkers are responding in their giving tonight, and we're so appreciative. We're so grateful. We're so appreciative for how you're responding on tonight. And what you need to do, please share this broadcast with other people. Share it. I want to see it on the timeline the rest of this week, because this was extremely beneficial. And I believe that someone is going to be free. They're going to be made whole just by hearing what we presented on tonight.
Definitely. The ways to give are on the screen. We just need about 20 more Real Talkers to sow that seed on tonight. And just put done in the comment section. Whatever you sow on tonight, whatever you give on tonight, I believe God will give it back to you. And I believe he's already given something to us on tonight already. And so when you've been blessed, and if you've been blessed on tonight, we just ask that you would be a blessing so that we can continue to offer. Thank you, Melinda. Thank you. And you know what? And I should have been obedient to this when I first opened up this opportunity to sow a seed. If there are 10 people tonight that want to sow an $80 seed, sow that seed. Sow it tonight. Matter of fact, I believe God is going to bless you tremendously for being one of those 10. I believe that. And watch God bless you for the same. Of course, you can't be God giving no matter how you try. Just quickly, on Wednesday morning at 6 a.m. is the Wednesday morning word. Want to encourage everyone to meet us this Wednesday morning at 6 a.m. The sanctuary opens up at 5. Love to have you join us. We had almost 60 people in church on last Wednesday morning. Tremendous blessing. I love to see these numbers. Thank you, Justina Sessions. I love to see that number go up to 100 people on Wednesday morning. Okay. And then on Wednesday evening, we have
School of the Bible. It's going to be absolutely amazing this Wednesday night. So you don't want to miss School of the Bible on Wednesday night, and also our Friday night encounter. It's going to be absolutely amazing.
Excellent. Next week, we'll make sure we have those slides so we can put those up so folks can see those slides for the announcements. Then on Sunday morning at 9 a.m., you can meet me right here, Facebook and YouTube. And then we're done by 9:59, 10 o'clock the latest, and you can shift right over. All of our virtual followers, you can shift right over to the Highway Nation at 10 a.m. Same channel, right? Following. You know what this reminds me of, Liz? Remember when our dads were on 970 AM radio?
Yeah.
That was, we had Roy Brown, you had Huey Rogers, Landon E. Penn. My dad was on, I think my dad came on at 9, and then you had your dad came on at 9:30. Then Landon E. Penn came on, then Roy Brown. I forgot the whole lineup, but we can go back and research it. But it's amazing how that same thing now has moved to the internet.
That's right.
It's no longer on the radio. It's on the internet now.
That's right. So they can get you at 9, come to me at 10. Of course, my service is longer than an hour. I don't know why. I do that to myself.
It's all right, Bishop. It's all right. You got a lot to give. You got a lot to say.
Oh, man, please. Lord bless us, please.
Well, listen, this is great. It's also a tremendous blessing to share this platform with so many of the Real Talkers. I think that, we must be doing something right, for so many people to be hanging out with us on Monday nights right after a full day on Sunday. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. And all we're trying to do, all we want to do is just have a dialogue just be able to contribute something to make sure that our succession plans are working, not just for our individual churches, but for, if I can use this term, for the body of Christ.
For the body. Oh, Mitch, let's also thank Dr. Janine Hyman. Dr. Hyman was on with us tonight. I'm sure there were other pastors, but I want to mention her in particular because she supports us, and she has some comments that she placed in the chat that I wish we would have had an opportunity to get to. But we thank you so much, Dr. Hyman, for always supporting us here at Real Talk. Robin Sinkler, thank you, Robin, for your seed tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, listen, we've been on so long now, it's hard to get off. All right. Listen, this has been a great time. I'm done. I have nothing else to say. We're going to end this session, but we'll see everyone next time on Real Talk. And as we always say, walk with the King today and be a blessing.